Hello there, and welcome to Tales of the Force, a place for fans to tell their Star Wars stories. Joining me today is Jeff. Jeff is a 39-year-old husband and father of two boys who lives in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. He is an indoor and beach volleyball coach, and he also has an academic background in religious studies, philosophy, and theological studies. Jeff shares his love of Star Wars on his blog, The Imperial Talker, and also on Threads and Instagram, where he is always up for meeting new fans and hearing about their journeys with Star Wars. Don't forget, this is Jeff's personal story. It is not my place on the show to dismiss, diminish, judge, or have an opinion on his story. Any views, thoughts, or opinions expressed are his own. Any comments on this episode are expected to be respectful. With all of that out of the way, please join me in welcoming Jeff to Tales of the Force. Hey, Jeff, how's it going today?
Going really well. How are you doing?
Good. I am doing good. It is a nice sunny day. Well, I say sunny, a little bit of rain where I live, but it's always needed, so I can't complain. It is watering my flower bed so that I don't
Oh,
have
that's
to do it.
excellent. I have one watermelon plant outside with one watermelon.
Oh,
So I am
nice.
getting a little bit of rain today as well. So hopefully it keeps growing and I make my 5-year-old happy with a watermelon in a
There
couple
you
weeks.
go. How long do you have to wait, or are you just like letting it grow?
I have no idea. He wanted to plant watermelon seeds this year and I said, "Okay." So this is the one plant that is actually growing.
Hey, hey, who doesn't? I'm sure somebody doesn't like watermelon, but I mean, I love watermelon. Do you put salt on it? I like to put salt on
I
mine.
I will put salt on it. Otherwise I'll just grab it and go. Like
Just eat
it's so
it.
easy to.
Yeah. We have no kiddos in our home, just furry-legged kiddos, and I did let them. I looked up because I'm one of those weird dog moms, and I'm always like so nervous. Like, can they eat this? Is this okay? Are they gonna die? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And dogs can have watermelon. Um, and so I let them try it, and they were like their little teeth like learning if they can bite it. And anyway, it was a
It's
fun
adorable.
interaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love watermelon. So I hope that watermelon plant turns out well,
I
and then
I
you can
do
have it as
too.
a nice little snack.
I do too. It would be great.
So I know you have a fun Star Wars blog and other things on socials. So why don't you tell everybody about that?
Okay. Yeah, so I started a blog in 2015, called The Imperial Talker, and that is also my call sign, I guess. On Threads, on Instagram, it was on Twitter before everybody got off Twitter.
Yes.
um, I got off Twitter a long time ago, but that's neither here nor there.
Yes, same.
Um, but yeah, so I started this blog. I was kind of looking for an outlet for myself. I'm super academic. At the time, I had just come off of teaching some college courses, was in the process of moving to the Washington, D.C. area, Northern Virginia. And I was like, I have a lot of thoughts about Star Wars, and I want to write those thoughts down and share them with other people. So I started this blog, and it's basically at this point just whatever I want to write, whenever I want to write. I'll kind of hit any topic that comes to mind. I'll go super deep into like, what does it mean to cheat death? And then
Mhm.
others, I'll write silly haiku once a month and call it Haiku's Day and see how people respond to my poetic musing on the Battle of Scarif or Jar Jar Binks or whatever. So I just like to have fun with it.
Yeah.
It's a way for me to play around with Star Wars and some other things like that I know academically, but also just to have fun
Yeah.
with writing.
That's awesome. So what is like the website and everything for, and I'll have it like in the show notes too.
Yeah, it's just I guess, do we even have to say www
I
dot
don't know.
anymore? I don't even know. I
I feel like
but
it's very assumed, but you know.
yeah, it's assumed. So it's just imperialtalker.com. Um and like I said, it's just, come and check it out, search on it, see if there's something you
Yeah.
like one of the posts, comment on one of the posts. Don't. It doesn't really bother me either way. It's for me first, and then it's for it's for people to come and have a good time reading about Star Wars, and
Yeah.
maybe some insight will come out.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's always good, even if, I don't know, I was gonna say something creative, but really anything, it's really good to, and I don't mean this in a selfish way, and that might be like some of my upbringing that I'm like trying to like overcome a little bit of like it's okay to do things for you.
absolutely, it
You know,
absolutely
and
is
it's good to
absolutely.
be like happy and do something for yourself, and that doesn't mean that it's like selfish. It's like good to express yourself, and it's good to put yourself out there, and if so happens someone else enjoys it too, then that's just like icing on the cake, because I think if we do things for everyone and then we're like constantly worried about what someone else is going to think about it,
Yeah,
then it's like almost negative for
yeah.
us, you know?
Yeah, some of the things that I've written, like, they haven't gotten many views, and that's okay. Like, I enjoyed the process of writing
Yeah.
it for myself, and other things that I've written that I've been really proud of have gotten the views that I was hoping for, and that's
Yeah.
great too. I get a little endorphin rush from that. But
Love a good endorphin rush, right?
absolutely, right? Who doesn't? But it's, at the end of the day, really, really walking that line between doing it for myself and sharing myself with others. And there's, for as much content as I've put out over the past 9 years, there's probably three times as much content that I've written that I haven't even put out there. So I
Yeah.
have, whether it's posts that I've started that I'm just like, I don't even know how to finish this
Yeah.
at this point, or just musings in like notebooks or whatever. So, and that to me is the fun part of it, is just kind of digging into Star Wars and really playing around with it and having fun with it in those moments.
Yeah. I Star Wars is so personal, and it is for everybody, obviously, but it does have so much personal meaning to each and every one of us. And I love that aspect of it. I love
Absolutely.
how,
Yeah.
even if there's something that you like and it doesn't touch me as much, or I like and it doesn't touch you as much, like knowing that personal connection to it, and that
Hmm.
we all have lives outside of Star Wars, and,
Yeah.
history and different things that like make us the people that we are. And so, of course, different things are going to touch us in different ways and make us smile or make us think when something else might not. And then
Right.
getting to know other people helps you have like such a great wider perspective
Absolutely.
on stories. And I don't know, I just, that it makes me happy.
It makes me happy too. It's
I
nice. It's a
had
nice way to engage with
someone
it.
on here, Kat, and she said, "Makes me happy here," and I just loved that. I was like, "Ooh, I want to steal that from you. It makes me happy here. I love it."
Spread the love. Spread the love. There you go.
Yes, exactly. So, what was it about Star Wars then that got you into it?
Oh man, like this is taking me way back now. Um, I I like to tell people that Star Wars is to me like breathing. I since since I was born, I was breathing. I had to breathe. It's the first thing the doctors did was get me to start breathing out of my mom.
Yeah.
And Star Wars has always been with me in the same way. Like I liken it to breathing because I've never known anything else. Um, I can't identify like a moment. I can't tell you the first time I ever watched Star Wars. I I'm 39 years old, so I going way back into the past is like the memories are starting to fade more and more now. But some of the best memories I have from when I was little was turning on the USA network. I don't know if you had USA growing up, but
I think so.
they would periodically be playing the original trilogy, and
Uh-huh.
that's how I would get to watch the original trilogy. Is anytime that it was on USA, I would be right there in front of it. I would be watching Star Wars. And I was always more interested in those moments at the time in the battles. Like I could sit through the Battle of Hoth, and then I was bored out of my mind whenever Luke and Yoda were talking.
Yeah.
Um, which is funny now because I love the Battle of Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back, but now I'm like super into what Yoda and Luke are saying.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so having those memories of just getting to sit in front of the TV, watching the Star Wars movies, but also I was an avid reader. Like I would anytime I couldn't be in front of the TV, especially at nighttime, like I would be reading just anything I could get my hands on. And I started pretty early reading all of those expanded universe novels.
Yeah.
And I still have the same copies of some of them that I read back then, like Heir to the Empire and the Jedi Academy series, and I would just wear them out. Like it didn't even matter what order I would read everything in. I would just read and be immersed in Star Wars. So, it's just yeah, it's just always been there. And then of course I had friends that I would play with. We would bring all of our little Star Wars micro machines over to each other's house, and we would have little battles and whatnot. And we
Yeah.
would have sleepovers and watch the movies. So yeah, there's just again, like it's just always been there, and just a staple in my life that I've always been able to go back to and immerse myself in, and I'm grateful for it for that reason. Just like I'm grateful that I'm breathing right now. So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
both
I
just go hand in hand.
I love that so much, and I'm grateful for you coming on and sharing all of
Oh,
this
of course,
with me
yes,
too.
absolutely,
Because it's so fun to get to talk to everybody and
yeah,
learn about everybody's kind of, I don't know, love for Star Wars and yeah, their entry points and favorite characters and stuff like that is fun,
yeah.
but just like I don't know, learning like the personal stories behind like why you also like something that I like is just
Oh,
I don't know, it's
absolutely.
so fun. I love
Absolutely.
it.
It's so interesting to me too. Like I love that as well. And I love hearing what other people have to say about Star Wars, and like whether they were a kid and whether they grew up in the 90s and like I did and enjoyed them, the movies and all the toys and everything at the time, or whether they've just recently come into it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have a 5-year old. He just started watching Star Wars. Like this is all new to him. Um, he and it's really fun watching him experience that. And not just as a dad seeing these like very father son themes in the original
Yes.
trilogy, um, and beyond the original trilogy for that matter, but just seeing a child experience something that George Lucas had in part intended for children. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
so it's really fun, and I'm looking forward to this 2.0 when his brother is old enough to watch it as well.
So what is your favorite Star Wars thing that you think for him to like or for either of them whenever it's both like to show or to read or to see like what is your thing that you're like, "Oh my gosh, I
Oh
can't
man,
wait."
that's a really good question. So I'm gonna take this back to the blog for a second.
Yeah, yeah, of
So
course.
when when we were expecting him, his name is Theodore. When we were
Oh, I
expecting
love that.
Theodore, um, about 2 months before he was born, I wrote a post that was titled "What if he doesn't like Star Wars?" because people kept asking me this question over and over and over. Jeff, what if he doesn't like Star Wars? And finally, I was like, I'm just going to write about this and then just send the link to everybody. I did not care.
Yeah.
If he didn't like Star Wars, I wouldn't care. Now, it was going to be hard for him not to like Star Wars because Daddy likes Star Wars.
Yes.
And Daddy has a room that he's currently in right now that's filled with Star Wars Lego sets.
Yes.
So, it's like a moth to a flame. He comes in here and he just looks at everything and he's in awe. But I didn't care. Like at the time, I didn't care. Like I cared about the fact that I was going to have a kid like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I was terrified
Yeah.
that I was about to have a kid. But he does like Star Wars, and he likes it in his own way. But the thing that I think that I am most excited for him, and his brother for that matter, if his brother ends up liking Star Wars too, is watching that first episode of the Clone Wars where Yoda, and this is a particular moment for me. It's where Yoda
Mm-hmm.
is talking to the three clones after they've had the battle, and he's telling them that they all matter, that they all have the Force in them. And to me,
Yes.
that's a really special moment because it's this that to me was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like what George Lucas and Dave Filoni and some of these people at Lucasfilm are creating now is they're trying to get across through a cartoon, no less, that this divine thing, the Force, is in everybody, even these clones who've been bred for war.
Yeah.
And so I love this idea, not of him becoming enamored by war, but getting to experience that moment where Yoda is telling the clones this, that he can see the Force in them. Because I
Yeah.
think that's to me, it was a special moment. If it doesn't hit the same way for them, that's fine. But I'll still enjoy the fact that I got to show them
Yeah.
that episode of the Clone Wars. And maybe they'll go back to it on their own, or maybe they won't.
Yeah. And that's wild that you brought up that episode because I just talked to Moshe, aka the Drip Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that episode is like what got him into Star
Oh,
Wars.
I
And
love
like he
that.
talked about, you know, that was his entry point and he loves that scene too. So that's so
Yeah,
cool.
there you go. Kindred spirits.
Yes, yes. Oh, so amazing. Yeah, I love moments like that too. I mean, I'm sure that they will understand those moments as much as you can as a kid. And then, if they continue to like Star Wars as they get older, those
Mm-hmm.
things have more significance as you get older and you can
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
those moments even better. I mean, I know there are core parts of who I am as a person because of cartoons that we're teaching kids things and we're teaching about um what's important, like
yeah.
nature and, taking care of things around you and all of that, just a little show that I watched or a movie. I still think of them today about how that had such a good impact on me as a kid.
Yeah.
And um yeah, I love that. That's such a great moment. I think it's not a moment everyone would think of, immediately. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people would maybe be like, "Oh, the reveal of Darth Vader," or
Right, right.
whatever. But like, that's so good. I love it.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up though, because he didn't really understand that moment. He had a
Yeah,
hard
yeah,
time with that moment, and I
yeah.
think that. But the thing that he did understand was he was really afraid when we watched Return of the Jedi that Luke would fall to the dark
Hmm.
side. He was legitimately terrified. There was like an anxiety I could see him in, and he didn't want to watch that moment, especially when Luke is hacking away at his dad.
Yeah,
And and I was like, we're gonna get through this. You gotta see what's about to happen. I can't give it away, but you gotta sit here with it. And so the thing for me, I guess, especially like with him and then with his brother eventually, is I get to experience Star Wars in this completely new way. And like there are these moments, like that scene in or that episode of the Clone Wars, and that scene from that episode that I'm excited for them to see. And I was excited for him to see Luke stand up and say, I'm a Jedi like my father before me.
Yeah.
But he's gonna identify with moments that are his own as well. And he's already done that in some really special ways. Like we watched the Freemaker adventures together, the Lego series,
Yeah.
and he just lights up every time he watches it. And he thinks it's funny. He thinks that the characters in it are funny. He thinks that Roger, the battle droid, who is like this mate, like doing maintenance and all these crazy shenanigans behind the scenes. He thinks he's hysterical, and so it's really fun for me to experience Star Wars now as a father who gets to watch his child really come into his own identity as a fan. It doesn't have to be what I like. It's one of the reasons why people, when they would ask me if I was going to name him after a Star Wars character, I was like, nope. He's gotta come to Star Wars on his own.
Yeah.
Um, I will help him along the way, but he's got to find the things in the franchise that he really likes. So, this I'm probably talking a lot about him, but
No,
he's
that's
a big
okay.
part of my story now. He's
Yeah.
been a big part of my own Star Wars story now for 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to even imagine, like, oh, I have this whole life of Star Wars without him that existed. And like, sure, I can go back to those memories, but like, man, the memories I'm making with him now are just great. They
Oh,
are
I
just
love
great.
that.
So yeah.
I love that so much. I mean, it's Star Wars is so generational, and it's just such a magical thing that I think a lot of things don't have, and the fact that it can be passed down from generation to generation, and it
Hmm.
it can be used to help people understand things. It can be used to tell stories that have so much hope and joy, but also so much like caution too for
Yeah.
different things. And
Yeah.
that, as we're kids, we pick up on things, and as we get older, we pick up on things. And um, yeah, it's so interesting to me. I mean, I've even had conversations with my parents because they saw the originals like in their 20s, like in the 70s when they came out. And just this like bizarre phenomenon it was that this movie came out, and no one had really heard about it. It wasn't supposed to be this huge thing, and then, there's just all these lines and everyone seeing it, and it
Hmm.
was this massive hit. And it kind of blows their minds sometimes, the fact that, you know, all this time later, their daughter is doing a podcast talking to other people that like Star Wars, and now there's all these movies and all these shows
Yeah.
and so much.
Yeah.
And it's just like wild to them to see it become into that. And like, at first, some questions of like, but Star Wars, like, why would you do, why do you love it so much? Like I
Yeah.
even have gotten that from my parents. And I'm like, when I explain it to them, they're like, "Oh, I get that." And it's like made them almost be interested in it again, to where
Hmm.
like I'll watch some of the new shows and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, have you watched this yet?" And they're like, "No, we haven't made time, but come over and watch it with me." And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just getting to still experience that, I've shared with some people one of my most fond memories, I think, and this movie doesn't get the love that I think it deserves, and it's totally okay if you don't like it, because I know not everybody likes it. But the Solo movie, I love the Solo movie, and Han is one of my dad's like favorite character. He loves Harrison Ford. Like anything Harrison Ford is in, he loves it.
Hmm.
And I was nervous at first to go because I'm like, they recast Harrison Ford and all this stuff. And I knew he loved Han. And sitting next to my dad, just like, I swear the first time I saw it with him, I wasn't even watching the movie. I was more
Oh
watching
my
him
gosh.
going like, and just like the joy on his face, and like, him smiling, and, watching the story, and the different things that he could identify with that really like, to his personal story that like really touched him while
Hmm.
he was watching it, was just like such a cool experience. And
Hmm.
so it's just so neat to see parent, child, or just mentor, mentee, whatever
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
relationship it is in
Absolutely.
your life, to see those dynamics and how they, I don't know, are encompassed by a Star Wars. It's so fun. So I love
Yeah.
hearing about this. Like,
No, and I love that you bring up Solo too, because I think that it does deserve to get. I don't know if it deserves to get a second movie or not. I'm not the one to make
yeah,
that decision. I know there are people that want that. I was skeptical. I was skeptical at
yeah,
first because how do you replace Harrison Ford? Like,
right,
it's
yeah,
Harrison Ford. But then I
yeah,
saw it and I was like, okay, Alden, you're doing a pretty good job here channeling Harrison Ford, and he gave you his blessing, and like
yeah,
you learned from him and you learned his mannerisms. Like, and then to add to that, like it had these wonderful moments in it that really I felt like filled in Han's story in some really fascinating ways. And some of them were might have been like little contrived ways, but some of them were just really really special ways that I was really excited to see
yeah,
um for Han Solo. So, I know plenty of people that hate it. I know plenty of people that still haven't seen it. Um I was pleasantly surprised and happy by it,
yeah,
and it's one of those ones that I go back to periodically
yeah.
just to
It's just
just
a
have fun,
fun
just have fun.
movie.
Yeah,
It's such a fun movie, and, like, I'm clearly a backstory person, obviously, and so I love any kind of stories that are, like, backstories on characters or humanize a character, even if
yeah,
it's, like,
yeah,
weird that it's humanizing them because it's, like, maybe the villain or something, like, I love that kinda stuff,
yeah. No, I do too. I
yeah,
really enjoy that kind of stuff too, especially with villains in Star Wars. Um, I think that's one of the reasons why, like, so I'm a big fan of Grand Admiral Thrawn,
yeah,
as many people are, but I
yeah,
always loved like going into his backstory, even in the expanded universe, and getting to read about it and see like what his motivations were, and like what his life was like before he joined the Empire. And like these were always fascinating questions for me, to be asking and to be answered as well. And I so appreciate all of all the writers who fill in the backstory for
yeah,
so many characters, not just on film, but like and in some of these shows, but in all these books and graphic novels and whatnot. Like, I sometimes feel spoiled as a Star Wars fan because there is such a litany of great writers and authors who have poured themselves into Star Wars,
yeah,
um, and have really like shaped me in some ways, like to the point where I I could not think of myself as identifying as anything but a fan of theirs. Um, Even outside of the Star Wars canon, like I've gone and found other things that they've written. So the fact that you have all these authors and writers, I just think it's so phenomenal. Um, and I love that they keep bringing in new ones now
yeah.
to get even more voices into the Star Wars canon, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, it's so important and it's so fun to see like fresh faces, fresh voices, new stories because in order for I don't know, things to continue, you have to keep it new and growing. Like if you just keep doing the same things or keep it stagnant, like I think that's why some stories or franchises kind of die out because
Hmm.
the age of the fans stays the same and
Yeah.
then they're not there anymore.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So
Right.
and it doesn't
Right.
pass on to other people. So, whether it's them going into animation or the books or different things that they have, found ways to bring more people in of all ages. It's just it's just a cool thing. So,
It's very cool. Yeah.
fun question.
Okay.
Since you have, I know, the background in academics, and you brought up Thrawn, and I know you obviously, if you could talk to a character in Star Wars, Thrawn would obviously be one of them that you would love to
Definitely.
sit down and have a conversation with.
Yeah.
But what are maybe two other characters and why? I mean, I think all of us pretty much know why you would want to talk to Thrawn because he's just
Oh man.
brilliant and all of those things. If you want to
Yeah.
expound on that, you can too. But what are two other people?
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to not want to talk to Thrawn because of his background in art history and all that
Yeah.
fun stuff. Oh man, that is a really really good and difficult question. All right, I'm gonna go in two different directions here. I'm gonna pick one from the expanded universe Legends that I would want to talk to, and I'll pick one from the newer stuff
Okay.
that I would want to talk to. The one from the expanded universe that I would want to talk to is Darth Nihilus. Um, Knights of the Old Republic 2.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, I would want to know more about, and this is getting into the backstory a little bit. I would want to talk to him more about the pain that he experienced that caused him to become who he becomes. Like, he has this very tragic. I don't remember every detail of the story. It's been a long time since I played Knights of the Old Republic 2. But I've always found him fascinating because I have that academic background. I did religion, I did philosophy. I read Nietzsche and nihilism comes up. I've always been fascinated by nihilists and this idea of this Sith Lord who just wants to siphon the life force out of people and this life energy out of people. And so I would just want to like sit down and have a conversation with him and find out like tell me everything. Just tell me everything about everything you've ever experienced, going back to when you were a child. I want to let's get tell me about the dreams that you had as a child. Let's psychoanalyze this guy.
Yes.
Um, and I think that again, going into the backstory of characters, some of his backstory is explored in the game. Um, but but to me, he's always resonated because his story is so tragic,
Hmm.
and I would just want to know more about that. I would just and I think
Yeah.
that sometimes the villains, and this has really happened now with the Acolyte,
Yeah.
with the Stranger and with May and with Osha. I think that they've really brought the villains into a new. They've kind of encouraged us to think about the villains in a different way now.
Yeah.
Um,
And with Kylo too, I feel like
oh,
too.
completely,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely with Kylo. And that's not to say that they haven't done that in the past with other villains. It's just that I feel like they've done it even more, and they've enticed me even more to want to know more about these villains and to know what their motivations are beyond just I'm an evil Sith Lord and I want to conquer the galaxy because I'm an evil Sith
Right.
Lord. Um, so yeah, Darth Nihilus definitely one. On the flip side, and this is totally out of left field, but I would want to know more, and I would want to have a conversation with Paige Tico, who if you recall, is the one who sacrifices herself in the
Hmm.
Last Jedi to destroy the whatever the hell ship it
Yeah.
is. Um, but
Was it a dreadnought?
a dreadnought, yeah, with
Okay.
the big cannons and the boom
Yeah.
booms,
Yeah.
and they're gonna destroy
Massive
the
ship.
fleet.
Yes.
And Poe gets himself in trouble for launching this attack. He kind of is the one that gets her killed. Whatever, we'll set that aside for now. This isn't to say that I don't like Rose Tico. I
Right.
love Kelly Marie Tran, and I loved Rose in The Last Jedi. I think she is
Yes.
a
Yes.
delightful character. I read the Cobalt Squadron book. I think it was by
Okay.
Jason Fry. And to me, between that, giving a little bit of her backstory and giving and then tying that into um The Last Jedi and what she does in The Last Jedi. To me, it was just it was really special getting to read a little bit more about Paige and who this person was that is willing to give the ultimate sacrifice in that moment. And so I would just want to know more about her. And that would naturally come with wanting to know more about her sister as well. But I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Paige Tico. Just like what was your motivation for for being willing to do that. Like, what
Yeah.
is going through your mind in that moment, um, to sacrifice yourself like that? And I just, I don't know, that moment in The Last Jedi as well. The Last Jedi is not my favorite of the films that have come out.
Yeah.
It's not my least favorite either,
Yeah.
but that moment really hit me. That moment really, like, it just got to me, and it's like, and this idea of this young woman who has so much life to continue living, to do this in this moment, to protect this very small group of individuals who can keep the fight going.
Yeah.
That was just huge for me. Like, that to me is one of the, like, the quintessential aspects of Star Wars, and so I would love to just know more about the type of person that would do that. And would I? And I guess it's almost a mirror back into myself. Like, would I be able to do that as well
Yeah.
in that type of moment? And it's that's not an easy question to answer. I hope I never have to be in that type of position.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting because you have two people that are like such opposites of each other almost. Like you have someone who's like willing to give their life, and then someone that's like taking, the force and life from people
yeah,
to fill something. So it's like very different
it's incredibly
characters.
different. It's incredibly different. It's
I like it though.
I yeah. I mean, otherwise, maybe just I would probably just want to talk to, like, literally every clone in the entire clone army. Just be like, I
Yeah.
want to know about you and you. Like, Rex, get in here. Cody, get in here. Like, I want to know. Like, do you guys all like? Is there something about all of you that is the same? Like, other than
Star
the way
Wars
you look.
therapy with Jeff. No.
There's probably some great podcast or blog or something out there where people are psychoanalyzing all these characters. I
Maybe. I
think it
don't
would be
know.
great.
So those were amazing answers. I loved all of them. Bringing it back though to you
Yeah.
and like your story. Um, so you watched the originals a lot on
Yep.
TV,
Yep.
and that kind of started your love, and you played with toys, and then now you're getting into this role of being able to share it, now with your kids. What was it like though after that? Kind of like in between. Do you have any special moments that, Star Wars was really impactful for you, or, any characters or that sort of thing that you would want to share?
Yeah. So, you know, definitely seeing, definitely seeing the special edition when I was, when I was young. I was probably in, like, seventh grade ish. Um, that was really special for me because I had never seen Star Wars in a theater before, and so getting to see them like that was really cool. And then getting to see the Phantom Menace then, was absolutely amazing. I was just young enough at the time to not know there was any controversy about anything in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
So I loved Jar Jar. I loved,
same.
I loved the CGI. I loved the pod race. I I just loved it. I actually decided to wear my
Yes,
throwback Phantom Menace shirt for you
I
today.
love it. I love
Um,
it.
it's one of my most precious Star Wars items. Um, and then going into high school and going and seeing Attack of the Clones, and then being in college. I actually remember, this is a little bit absurd, but I remember after I saw Attack of the Clones, I was like, oh, I'm going to be in college when Revenge of the Sith comes out in 2005. I hope I still like Star Wars
Yeah,
because I had such a great time going to see Attack of the Clones. And again, I was I was old enough at that point to know, like, okay, there's a little bit too much CGI in this thing, but still young enough to just not not care and
yeah,
just have fun with it. And I just remember, like a week or two after, just having this fear that, like, will I still be a Star Wars fan when I'm in college? Thank God I was still a Star Wars fan thank the Force, I was still a Star Wars fan when I was in college, because that was one of the best moments, was getting to see Revenge of the Sith. Like, I went, I it was like the last day of finals, I finished my final, and then I went and got in line to see Revenge of the Sith, and I was up until like 4 in the morning, the next morning, and I got to be in line all day to see this movie, and it was just the best. Um, and so that was a really special moment for me. I had never stood in line for a movie like that before, like for the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. For whatever reason, I just went and I was able to sit down in the theater. I must have not seen them like
Yeah.
opening night or whatever. Um, but Revenge of the Sith was the first, one of the few, but the first Star Wars movie that I actually saw on opening night. So that was really cool. Um, and then something else that's just a little bit more personal to me is so a lot of people know that I like Star Wars. Like I kind of just exude this aura of Star Wars from me. But I'm not the type of person that like is like trying to butt into every conversation like, hey, I like Star Wars too. Like can I come over here? And I do that. I'm a volleyball player. I do that with volleyball. I'll try to butt into volleyball games,
Yeah.
less Star Wars conversation. But I was working in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was working with GED students in a low income area of Nashville, Tennessee. And the students there, all of whom are older than me, I was like 22, 23 at the
Hmm.
time, maybe a little bit older, but they have all of these incredible life experiences. They have all of these hardships at home. Um, but I would always find ways to like bring up my love of Star Wars with them, like whether it was like teaching something in class and being like, "Hey, like, anybody gonna watch Star Wars tonight? The Clone Wars?" Just little things here and there. And I got really close with some of the students there, and I just remember coming in one morning to teach. It's like 8 in the morning, and everybody's getting their coffee and whatnot, just mingling, having a nice conversation, and this one woman named Laurel, is she just grinning at me, just the biggest grin on her face. And I was like, okay, what's going on here, Laurel? You're kind of, you've got something going on here. You're not telling me. And she pulls out from behind, and I have it here. She pulls this notebook out
Hmm.
with Obi-Wan on it. And I was like, that's Obi-Wan.
It's Clone Wars
It's
Obi-Wan.
it's
What
Clone
is
Wars
this?
Obi-Wan. Did you get that for yourself? And she goes, no, I got it for you. And so she had been at Walmart the night before, and she saw that, and she thought to herself, oh, Mr. Cagle needs this. He
Oh my
he he
gosh.
needs this he needs this notebook. And so I had never had an experience before where somebody who I was working with in that capacity, like, had ever done something for me like
Yeah.
that. And it was really emotional for me. I remember tearing up in the moment, like oh my gosh, like Laurel, like you were thinking about me and you saw this and you knew how much I love Star Wars. And I just remember giving her like the biggest hug, like, oh my God, like this is the best gift I've ever
Oh,
gotten. And
yeah.
I still have it. I try not to overuse it because I don't want to run out of pages yet, but I have consistently written a lot of things in it, like for the blog, and whatnot. But I've always like kind of just had it close to me whenever I need, a notebook to write in.
Yeah.
Because it's just, and to be entirely honest, I don't know what Laurel is doing now. I
Yeah.
haven't seen her in 12 years, since I stopped working there at that location. But were she to ever see this, I would just thank her again for it, and I would just, if I could, I would just give her the biggest hug in the world again
Yeah.
for it. So,
It's wild how the littlest things can mean so much. And just
oh yeah,
the kindest little gifts or words or actions can just go such a long way
yeah.
and mean so much to someone to where 12 years later you still have that notebook
Oh, I'm
and it
never, I'm
still
never
gives
giving
you
it
the
up.
same feeling, you
I,
know?
in fact, I like people have joked with me because I have such a massive Star Wars collection that like I'm gonna be buried with it, almost like like an Egyptian pharaoh. Like I'm gonna need a pyramid of just Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I think if there was anything of my collection I would want to be buried with, it's this notebook.
No.
I would want this notebook to be with me, and maybe in 10,000 years somebody can find it and be like, why the hell was this guy buried with this
What
notebook?
is this?
What is this? What is going on? Some aliens will come down and they'll be like, what's going on here with this guy?
What is this man with this light sword thing on this
Right.
picture?
I'll be the most fascinating like skeleton they find.
Yeah. They'll be like,
Um,
oh, ancient humans or so. I don't know.
but it's, and that's not to say that I don't like the stuff that I have. I love the Star Wars collection that I have, and I just obsessively add to it. But I also know that it's finite. I also know that like it's going to eventually get passed on to my kids. It's eventually not going to be mine anymore. And someday I am going to die.
Yeah.
And if there is something from my collection that I want with me
Yeah.
in the afterlife or whatever comes next,
Yeah.
it's this notebook, because it really, it's about, I got it because of something more. There was a bigger connection, from getting it, and a more meaningful connection than me like finding something on eBay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such an important thing for people to remember is you can give someone something as simple as a notebook because
Yeah,
you're thinking about them, or a compliment, or encouragement, or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be this fancy thing, like you're talking about. You're like, I have this collection, I have all these other things, but this notebook is what means so much to me because of the reason behind it.
yeah,
And I know I said we weren't going to go here, but it makes me think of Star Wars as a whole, or different parts of it. And kind of what I was saying earlier, and you were saying earlier about how we have these personal connections to these stories. And that's why it's so hard for me when people will trash a movie or a show or
hmm
something, because to someone else, that is their notebook. Like
yeah,
it
yeah,
helped them maybe through a hard time. Maybe it doesn't have the best dialogue or the best writing or the best CGI or
right,
storyline or whatever it
right,
has.
right,
Um, but it's important to somebody, and
yeah,
it has helped them through something, or made them smile. It doesn't have to be as deep as help them through something. It could just make them smile on a day that they
yeah,
needed a smile,
yeah,
and so I won't say much more than that, but just to remember that we can be like that person that gave you that notebook, and we can help someone else have something so positive that it's affected you 12 years later,
yeah,
this act of kindness. And we can do that, or we can make someone have, you know, a doubt about their choices in something, and, different things for as long of a time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
just
It's
to be mindful of those things.
absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right. Like, and this is something I think about quite often as a fan, and like as my responsibility as a fan. My responsibility as a fan, even if I don't like something, is not to go out and tell you why you shouldn't like the thing. If I don't like the thing, I can articulate that for myself. I can wrestle with that. I can talk to like-minded people about that. Um, but it's not my place to try to convince you or anybody else that because this thing exists, you're not allowed to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that, and I know that, words like gatekeeping get thrown around a lot, and toxic fandom and stuff like that. Um, and I think rightfully so at times, but I think that for me, what I've always tried to do as a fan is articulate the reasons why I might not like something without without making anybody else feel diminished.
Yeah.
by that. And in something as big as Star Wars, there's always going to be something we love, and there's always going to be something that just doesn't hit us the way that we were hoping. Like it's
Yeah.
going to miss, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Everything that like I'd like to imagine on some level that like ancient people when they heard their myths that some of them were like, "Oh, this is incredible!" Like this, and that there were some of them that were just like, "Huh? Like I this ain't doing it for me." I don't know. I'm not an ethnographer. I don't study mythology like really closely. I'm an amateur, but I just think it's funny um, to think that everything has to be perfect all
Hmm.
the time. That somehow and that perfection is somehow exclusively for me. Like that's not how any of this works. I and again, if I don't like something in it, I've got my best friend I can call and he and I can talk about it and I don't need to make anybody else, feel bad about
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where like, you're like being selective in who you talk about it with, and I think some people would be like, well, I'm just stating my opinion online. And it's like, yeah, but how are you stating it online? And
yeah.
what is your audience and what is your intention? And while we can never know someone's intention and we can never know really why they're doing something. And I think we have to be careful too to not like portray our perceptions on other people too,
Mhm.
because they're also people and none of us are perfect.
Right.
Not to excuse like things that
Yeah.
are 100% not okay,
Right.
but
Right.
in like opinionated like reviews and things like that, it can get hard. And so I'm just learning for me to know this isn't for me. It's making me negative. And so it might be okay for somebody else. And so I'm just going to focus on this instead. And,
Yeah.
knowing like our boundaries and like what we want to surround ourselves with, but also still having the friends that or people in our lives that we can go, I don't know. Did that hit you in the same, like it's also okay to be honest too,
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, like I when I went and saw The Force Awakens, like I that was the so Revenge of the Sith. I stood in line for Revenge
Yeah.
of the Sith. I stood in line from 8 in the morning until midnight for The Force Awakens. I watched it. 2 hours later, I come out and the me and the three friends that I was with, we stood in a circle and we were like, "What was that?" Like we didn't like it at first.
Yeah.
We were like, "What did we just? Did we just watch A New Hope?"
Yeah.
Like, it, but over time, it took me time
Yeah.
to be okay with it. It took me time to say, okay, these are some of the things they were trying to do in it. These are still things I don't really like about it. But at the end of the day, it's just it's part of Star Wars now. And like you said, somebody out there that was their first experience of Star Wars, and that might have been the most special experience of Star Wars they have ever had. And I will be damned if I'm going to be the one to take that away from them
Yeah.
because it's not my responsibility as a fan to do that.
Yeah. 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 That's and I've shared that on here before, but that's kind of how I was with The Last Jedi at first. Like I really had
Mm-hmm.
to sit with that movie and
Oh
like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
somebody now that like really likes it. And I know that there's people out there that it is not a movie they like. They don't like it. It's people that are nice about it and they're not saying like it's not
yeah,
Star Wars or if you like
yeah,
it, you're not a Star Wars fan, not that sort of situation. But like I like it. Again, it's like the humanizing factor. I
yeah,
love that I personally, from my story and my history and like what I've gone through, I like seeing Luke not being perfect. And I also completely understand the other argument of wanting someone who never, not that he never made mistakes, but
right,
he, was never down about being hopeful
right,
or following the light or whatever. Not that he wasn't following the light, but he was questioning a lot of things that I think were
yeah,
hard for people to see Luke question. And so while it was good for me as a fan, I understand 100%. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it is totally valid also for people to want to have a hero figure who didn't go through that journey at the same time.
Yeah,
So, like, that's fair and valid too. And it doesn't make
absolutely.
them or me not Star Wars fans. It's just a different perspective
It's just a
on it,
different
I
point of
feel
view.
like.
It's almost like a very wise Jedi in Star Wars was the one to tell us about certain points of view, and that Star Wars fans consistently miss that
Yeah.
point at times. Like, oh, that's what he means. Okay, all right. We're allowed to have certain points of view on this. I'm allowed to have a
Yes.
point of view. You're allowed to have a point of view. We don't have to see eye to eye on everything. And that's the
Yes. And
great
it's
thing
helped
about it.
me though, like when I don't get something, hearing someone else's story and why they love it and why it's like been impactful to their life or, whatever way, big or small, I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I can appreciate that more. Like it
Yeah,
still not might not be my thing or my favorite, but it gives me so much more respect and appreciation for the moment or
yeah,
the show or the movie or whatever it is,
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
it made someone else happy or smile in a way that like maybe Ahsoka is to me or
Right.
something like that. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I like that. I like that. I think you're absolutely right.
Thanks. Is there any other I don't know, things that you want to share with anybody about your Star Wars journey? Um or characters or anything, I guess,
It's
before we
interesting.
wrap up?
I this might come as a surprise, I guess. Or maybe not. I've never been to a con. I've never been to Celebration. I've never been to Galaxy's Edge. Um, I don't cosplay. I I often find myself admiring the fans that do those types of things. And that's not to try to deflect off of me and like talk
Yeah.
about talk about other people. But I feel like for myself, I sometimes feel when I see just these incredible things that people are doing out there, I sometimes feel kind of lost in the fray of it all because it does feel sometimes like to be a fan, you're supposed to be going to conventions and meeting, I know that you just got back from one, um, meeting like Hayden Christensen, which
But
would be
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Or going to Celebration and dressing up as the Mandalorian or whoever you want to
Whatever.
dress up
Yeah.
as. That's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I've never had that motivation. People have asked me like, what are you gonna do when your kids want to go to Galaxy's Edge someday? And I'm like, I will go to Galaxy's Edge. I will take my kids there when they want to go. But that desire to go, I've never had it. For me, my Star Wars journey is really immersing myself into it,
Hmm.
and it really being for me
Yeah.
first and foremost, kind of like what we were talking about the writing even. And so I love and so respect the people that take the time and the energy to make the cosplay outfits and to who go to Celebration and go to these conventions and stand in line to meet their childhood heroes who are
Yeah.
actors or actresses. Um, and I have a feeling maybe someday I will go to one or two just to give it a try or see what it's all about. I've been joking since the Acolyte came out that I would love to get one of those Jedi civilian robes that Osha has to wear, and that Basil is wearing in the show, because that would be me.
I
I
love
am the
it.
civilian on the Jedi mission. I know my place. I am going back to the ship when Master Saul tells me to go back to the ship. That is where I'm going. I am not going to be Osha and turn around and say, we got to go back and help them.
Yeah.
No, sir. I am going to the ship. So I would love to, if I do cosplay someday, I would love to get that. I would love to go to a Comic Con or some version of it and just find a group of Jedi and be like, hey, I'm just going to tag along until you tell me to go back to the ship. That would be my type of cosplaying and my
I
type
love
of
it.
conning, if you will.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like I said, like I love coming in this room that I'm in right now with my Star Wars stuff and just being in here. I'll come in here and read. I'll come in here and write. Um, I'll come in here and put Lego sets together.
Yeah.
I'll come in here and play with my kid, or I'll tell him which helmet goes on which clone trooper and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, that to me is like how I Star Wars,
Yeah.
and again, like I love seeing how other people do it. I love hearing
And
how
you
other
don't
people do
have
it.
to do any of it to
Right, right, absolutely.
like I've never read any of the comics. I have played maybe a few of the video games, which I'm trying
There's a lot of
working
video games.
on
There's a
working on
lot of
both of
video
those.
games.
And I haven't really gotten into Lego that much with a lot of it. Like some of it is because people have like bought it for me or
Yeah,
different things. But I'm willing to like try different things. But like there's some people that would be like, oh my gosh, you've never read any, like I have read some of them, but like you haven't read all these, expanded universe or legends books. Like you're not a fan. You know what I mean? Like it's,
I think that's so absurd when people say
yeah,
things
but
like
I mean, it's
that.
like the same for like you don't have to go to cons. You don't have to go to Galaxy's Edge.
Right.
You don't have to do all those things. I will tell you though, the feeling that you described waiting in line for Revenge of the Sith is kind of the feeling that you have at like a convention or
Interesting.
even at Galaxy's Edge because you're
Yeah.
around people and a lot of times you're waiting for something.
Mm-hmm.
And you're around those group of people that are like excited about the same thing that you're like excited about, whether it's like the next panel that you're going to see or person
Mm.
or ride or whatever. Like it's if you're in Star Wars stuff, it's like Star Wars people, and so you make friends in line. You
Oh,
get
I'm
to,
sure.
so
Yeah.
it's like it's kind of similar to that
Yeah.
because we don't really wait in line for movies that much anymore. Like we used to, it's not the camping out and the, waiting all day because the seats are ticketed and you buy them online. And
Right.
I get that experience because, like, I've done that in the past too. So the closest thing that I've found that's kind of similar is like something like that. But again, it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you have to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that's like I'm con curious. I would definitely like be willing to do it. And I think it would be fun to go with people that I know or who are
Hmm.
also going. I would feel super weird. I'm pretty extroverted, but I get really introverted sometimes, like if it's just me. So having
Yeah.
like somebody with me or two people with me to, the power of one, the power of two, the power of many
Yeah.
kind of a deal.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun, obviously, going with people, but like sometimes I've had the best conversations and met some great friends sitting in a line alone because somebody that I went with was doing something else and I randomly made a new friend in
That's
line with
cool. That's
someone
really cool.
and it's like, it is more comfortable obviously, for some people to go with people, but there are some people who are like, I don't care, I'll just go by myself,
Yeah, yeah,
So,
totally, totally. I
yeah,
totally respect that from people. I will say too, and just to piggyback off of all of this, there's two people in particular that I would love to meet if
yeah,
I was to go. And I know that it would be I don't know, I don't think they really go to them anymore, but one would be Jake Lloyd. And I know that he's had some mental health things over the years, but part of the reason I would want to meet Jake Lloyd is because I would want to just thank him for
hmm,
everything he gave to the role of Anakin in the
yeah,
Phantom Menace.
yeah,
Because to me, like he was a kid,
yeah,
and he really resonated with me as a young adolescent.
yeah,
So I really appreciate him, and I feel like just like Hayden has kind of had this renaissance, if you will. I feel like
yeah.
Jake Lloyd deserves the same renaissance
Yes, yes.
as
There's a
a.
lot of people that are talking about that. I feel like online, and
That's
like,
great. I hope to come across those people because
yeah, they're like,
I
let's
know that
get Jake to con so he can experience the same
seriously,
thing.
because I want him to know. I know that he's had his struggles over the years, but I want him to know truly how much he means to me and how
Yeah,
much he's meant to other people.
yeah,
And you've also seen with Ahmed Best like this
yes,
kind of
yes.
renaissance as well. I know that he had some really dark moments
Hmm.
after some of the backlash he got from the Phantom Menace. So I would love to just tell Jake Lloyd, like, man, you are awesome. Like, and also you were a kid.
Yeah.
Like, and it's okay. You still matter to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other person would be George Lucas. Like,
Yes.
I would like probably just cry my eyes out and just like, thank you so much for doing that. Like, I like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you made American Graffiti and that they gave you the money to then go and make this. Like, oh my gosh, thank you. So I would just love to meet George Lucas. Like,
Yes.
he to me is like he's he's beyond anything I could dream of as like somebody I could possibly meet. I doubt I will ever meet him, but if I could, I would go and I would get a ticket to meet George Lucas.
Same. He is somebody that I would love to have a conversation with. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know, like I don't know, his mind is so like fascinating to me. And so
yeah,
yeah, that would be someone, when they say like you can invite so many people to the dinner, and who would you invite, that
yeah,
kind of question.
yeah.
He's definitely someone I'd be like, I want to talk to George.
Oh my God. Absolutely. I would want to just sit down and pick his brain. I would be like, give me the whole reading list that you were reading when you made A New Hope. Like, tell me what you were eating. What, like, I want to get in your head, man, and just know this stuff. I
All
just,
the things.
yeah, all the things. But I would ask all those things after I was done crying from meeting
Yes.
him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I get it. This is so random, but have you seen that video? It's like, I don't know if it was on Vine like originally or if it's just an old YouTube clip, but they're filming like this random documentary or something, and randomly George Lucas is like behind this guy, and he's just like oblivious that there's cameras and they're filming this thing, and
okay,
then he like goes into this other building or something.
I feel like I have seen that. It's been a, okay.
It's
I'm
an
gonna
old clip, but
Yeah, no,
it's
I know what
still
you're
funny
talking
to
about.
me.
I know what you're talking about, but I haven't. It's been ages since I've seen that. Man,
I don't know why I giggle whenever that pops up, but it makes me laugh because I'm like, oh my gosh, like he
probably
has
because
no
I
idea
mean,
what's
he
going
gives
on.
off. He just seems like the type of guy that gives off that aura of like walking into somebody's shot and just not knowing he's in somebody's shot,
Yeah.
right? Like he just like he would be texting and just totally oblivious that there's something
Oh,
else going
whatever.
on
They
in
can
there.
edit it out later. It's fine.
Right, which is kind of what he did. It was kind of his MO. Like let's just get the shot and then we'll edit it later.
Yeah. There is like, I think in a more recent interview, I feel like even with Hayden, where he's like, I was like, hey, George, can I say these lines like this or deliver them this way? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think he dared to say, I think it would be better or
Yeah,
anything like that.
yeah,
But and I think I don't want to misquote, but it was something to the extent of Lucas going, "Yeah, you can. I mean, I'll let you do it, but I'm still going to pick my way," basically.
right, right. No, that absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of just the impression that you get. Like he had a vision and he wanted to execute that vision, and
Yeah.
whether people love that vision or hate that vision, the fact of the matter is it's 2024 and we're still talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
And we, with their flaws and all, still love the prequels. Not
absolutely.
everybody, but
Yeah,
I know you do and I do. So,
I most definitely do.
is there anything else that you would like people to take, I guess, from this and you sharing your story?
Oh man, that's a great question. I I don't know. I guess I guess for me, what's most important is as a fan just always keeping my own perspective. Like I think it's so easy to get lost in the noise, particularly of like social media,
Yeah.
um, of seeing everybody with an opinion. Like I know that when I put something on threads, there's another opinion, right? Like there's my opinion, or if you put something out there, there's your opinion. And I think that I think that I would like fans to know that if they don't feel comfortable sharing their love of Star Wars out there, whether it's through a blog, whether it's through a podcast, whether it's on social media, that that doesn't make them any less
Mhm.
of a fan. It just makes them a different type of fan. It
Yeah.
just makes them somebody who doesn't want to do that. But I want them to know that if they do want to step out and share their thoughts on Star Wars in a positive way, or even if they have a controversial opinion that they want to share. Maybe they don't like The Last Jedi for legitimate reasons that are their own. I'm willing to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm willing to invite them into the space and have that conversation. I'm not going to agree with everybody out there. I'm not going to disagree with everybody out there. But I always try to create a space where people can come and they can feel comfortable being a fan, whatever the way is that they want to be a fan. So if people want to engage with me, that's great, because I love hearing the stories, just like you do on this podcast. Like, I love hearing the stories of what people are doing. I think that Star Wars just has so much meaning for people. Um, and so if people want to share that with me, I'm always interested in hearing from other people, and trying to incorporate that into my writing too, if I ever have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm always saying a great reminder, but everybody has like really good things and reminders for people. I feel like when we're, you know, coming to the end of episodes and they have something they want to remind people of, or have someone think about, or I don't know, just a different perspective, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have been so good and made me even reflect and like think about different things, because hopefully we're all growing and learning, and
Yeah,
who we are yesterday isn't going to be maybe the same person we are tomorrow. And
exactly.
hopefully it's for good reasons and it's a positive growth, and not something negative,
Yeah.
because like you're saying, I want there to be a space for people to feel comfortable to not have to agree on everything. You don't have to agree
Yeah.
on everything. That's okay. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to. It's art, subjective. And but not feel ostracized like one way or the other, because that's something that sometimes happens is things turn into very tribalism, and like one way or the other, and if you're not for us, you're against us, and
Mm-hmm.
and very like you have to have this dead set opinion on this or this, and if you don't, then you're not this, like you're not in this situation, you're not a
Right.
fan or whatever. And um I hate that. I
Oh,
hate that
it drives
people.
me crazy. It drives me
Yeah, and
absolutely
and
crazy.
what I dislike about it the most is people feeling, and I've seen this expressed on threads a couple of times lately,
Yeah.
people saying, I love Star Wars, but I A, don't feel comfortable sharing that love, or B, seeing X, Y, and Z is making me want to retreat even further away
Yeah.
from saying that I even like it at all. And that makes me so sad, because
Yeah.
like yes, there are loud people out there, and I said this in a post that I posted for the podcast. Just because you're the loudest doesn't mean you're the realest. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't. And so there are more of us, not to be cheesy, but there are us out here that are going to respect your opinion, even if we don't agree with it, even if it's not the same. Like, we can hold space for each other. We
Yeah.
can be like the Bindu and Rebels, like, the in between. Like, that place can exist.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think we're seeing people finally coming together to try to create that space so that other people can have space and feel genuinely wanted and valued in our fandom, which is just important
Yeah.
to me, and I know to a lot of other.
I think that's really well said, and I think that to just kind of bring it full circle back to that Clone Wars episode, one of the reasons why I think that Clone Wars episode is so special is because Yoda is reminding not just the clones but the audience, us,
Mm-hmm.
that there is something special about us all. And if we put ourselves in the positions of those clones and we imagine Yoda speaking with us, then Yoda's kind of telling us, like, each of you has something really wonderful to offer to everybody.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to step into the space and share. yes, there might be some blowback from some segments of the fandom, but there's also going to be a lot of people, and hopefully people understand that you and I are a couple of those people that are going to step forward and say, "Welcome, like come
Yeah,
on in,
yeah,
everybody's welcome here."
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Jeff, again so much for coming
Yeah, thank
on.
you for having me. This was delightful.
Yes, it was. It was so fun. I feel like I make new friends every time, which is always lovely because I love friends who, I mean, I guess not everyone likes having friends, and that's
I like
okay.
having friends, and I will need a friend to go to a con with eventually. So
Yes, there you
we will
go.
make it happen.
Yes, or Galaxy's Edge eventually, maybe.
Yes,
It
yes.
is, it's, I cried, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw the Millennium Falcon for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and I totally cried because it's just like, it takes you back to being like a kid, like a little kid, and
That's
just
really
being
cool.
enamored with like Star Wars all over again. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's crazy.
that's
But
lovely. I like that.
yeah, yeah. So again, thank you for coming
Thank you
on.
for
It
having me.
was
I
so
appreciate
much
it.
fun to chat, and I know I will be continuing chatting with you in other
Definitely.
spaces and
Yeah.
and other ways.
I look forward to it.
Thanks for joining me today on Tales of the Force. This podcast was hosted, produced, and created by me, Jessica McNair, with music by Michael Hoover. Don't forget, our stories of hope is the force of this fandom, and they are a powerful ally to each and every one of us. Life creates them, makes them grow. Their energy surrounds us and binds us together. Luminous beings we all are, and not this crude matter. May the Force be with you always.